All right, so ask away.
Also, my question is, when you write for your audience, are you thinking of the average person or are you thinking of the reader who's a fringe reader?
In fantasy or something like that.
Yeah, on the edge of normal or the edge of what's traditional interest of pop culture stuff, it's beyond that, I
Um,
would think.
I'm writing to the broad audience. And the main reason that I'm writing to a broader audience and not just fantasy readers is because historical fiction that is similar to mine. So, like when I looked up comparative titles, a lot of the books that I find that are more based on folklore and mythology tend to be in the adult literature section of the bookstore. And because of that, I tend to try to write it broader and also hear other voices like yours or, people who would pick it up even if they're not fantasy writers.
What's the age range that you're looking to have the book appeal to? Because I know you with the children's books, you're gearing towards elementary or young elementary, and then with your fantasy novels, it's young adults or well, you did say your audience is pretty broad, so
Yeah, so it's like there's no age category, but I do tend to write it relatively PG-13 because
Mhm.
I am very aware that my parents will read it
Oh, okay.
and my children will read it, notably my 14-year-old. And
Oh,
so
okay.
so because of that, I tend to write it. For example, the story that I'm writing right now has a vampire-like creature in it, and that involves understanding seduction and how people respond when seduced. And while I could take that in a direction that could be very sensual or explicit, I'd rather skirt that and instead
Leave it to the imagination.
leave it to the imagination so that the adult reader is going to read more into it than the child reader.
So when you think of character development, do you try to relate it to what's modern society is going through, or is it more timeless and it's about facing your fears and yeah, tackling your biases? Because that'll happen in any generation, in any age.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's an interesting question. So I make it real by addressing it on two levels. So yes, there is this kind of internal conflict that the characters may have where they may not feel good enough, or they may feel they have to do something perfectly, or they might be feeling alone. But at the same time, they do struggle with real world problems where it could be just, I'm literally trying to make a friend right now and I can't seem to figure out how to talk to these people. I'm a huge believer of, you invite old people and children to the wedding. So I want this to have interactions between different age groups, different classes, different, like animals and humans, you name it.
Is one more better for the not driving the plot, but is one more better for managing the character as it navigates relationships?
Let me turn the question around. I'm going to answer it in a completely different way.
Eh.
In the universe that I'm writing, and we're getting into Buddhist cosmology here, there are different types of beings. And two of those types of beings are animals and humans. And the differentiator between humans and animals is that humans generally have free will, or they have the ability to kind of self reflect, or to not necessarily be driven by their instincts. Whereas with animals, they are in a type of hell. They are a level higher than hungry ghosts. So if you think that your typical Bloody Mary style, there's a ghoul lurking in a dark place because they had too many attachments to the world. And so animals are like a notch above that. And they are driven by their prey drive. They are driven by more basic needs and survival needs. Whereas humans, being above animals, tend to, while having survival needs, tend to have a higher calling. And so humans have the ability to choose good or bad. They can choose, do I do the right thing or do I hold back and miss having dinner so that I can feed this house person? And so in that way, humans have that ability to choose, and through that decision making, they can kind of elevate themselves or devolve themselves. So that's a huge writing factor in all of my books, where if you're an animal, you tend to be kind of good, evil, neutral, but more attached to your survival skills. You're looking
Mhm.
for a mate, you're looking for dinner. And because you're just acting out of survival, there's no good or bad associated with that. Whereas if you're a human, looking for dinner could mean eating a piece of corn or killing an animal for dinner. And as a human, if killing an animal for dinner bothers you, then there are repercussions and you're going to feel them.
Mhm. It's interesting, like, with social media and the tightness of people living in crowded spaces, I find that are getting a little more rough around the edges and where we're, like, more territorial, what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. And then animals, but humans tend to go to animals to feel comfort and to see them as almost maybe not noble beings, but, like, sensitive creatures that are not altruistic, but loving, sweet, and comforting. I find it very interesting that I think with the times, I don't know, I wonder if literature is going that way too and exposing that part of the modern day human and the modern need for the comfort of animals and something natural that's not competing with us for resources.
But I think in this case, the way that those humans are looking at animals is displaced because
Okay.
at the end of the day, that animal is just looking at that human as you're the one who provides me food. So if you want cuddles, I'll give you cuddles. That animal is just doing it because this is the life that they were born into, right? The animal doesn't have any choice. It doesn't have any free will. It can't just be human. It's stuck living in your house, following your rules, like, they are the child that never grows up and leaves. And humans, as we are, lacking interhuman connection, seek connection. And so we are going to displace that connection onto our animals. And absolutely, I have so many pets, and I do use all of those pets as my emotional support animals. And I appreciate that they are very, very loving and very caring. But it would be a fallacy for me to believe that they have some sort of altruistic motive behind their love for me. I think that they love me because they see me as an alpha or like the person in charge who's going to make sure they're fed. I have a cat who poops in the sink whenever he's annoyed with me.
You know that for a fact that's why he does it?
Yes. If there's no food in the automatic feeder, there will be a poop in my sink. And so the thing is that like I said, we tend to put our own ideas on animals.
Uh-huh.
And I think that definitely sways the way that we think about them or we write about them. Again, when I'm writing more from this Buddhist cosmology perspective, where animals are basically in a form of hell because they are attached to those drives, they are dependent on humans, they are enslaved or they are eaten, and that is just their lot in life. And again, the human can get eaten by an animal, you know. So I really like the way that this conversation is going. Yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm gonna have to heavily edit it, like cut out all of our parts. But it's being really noisy behind me right now. So why don't we stop it there, and I will see if I can edit that and make some sort of clips out of it, and it can be like a trial because we could do a few of these, and then I can piece them together.